What part do the Huns play in history? Is their place just to be remembered as a savage group of people that migrated westward, invoking carnage on the way? How did this group of simple herding people change the landscape of history? The origin of the Huns placed them north of China in the eastern steppe of the Mongolian region. It is speculated that they were related to the Xiongnu people. The Xiongnu were also pastoral, which meant herding people, who also transformed into fierce warriors. It is worth noting that there are some who believe that they are more closely linked to the Turkic people, who also happen to reside in today's Mongolian territory. As we step back in time, we will cover some important events that helped shape the landscape of the rise and fall of empires as the Huns advanced westward into Europe. Taking into perspective the time frame of the Huns, they shared the stage with the Romans, the Germanic peoples such as the Goths and the Visigoths. In 91 CE, Tacitus, a Roman historian, mentions the Huns as living in the region by the Caspian Sea, and are not mentioned as being any threat to the then powerful Roman army, but that didn't mean they were not establishing themselves as warriors. From 220 to 200 BC, the Huns continuously raided Chinese villages, which contributed to the building of the Great Wall of China. During this period between 209 BC to 121 BC, the Huns and the Xiongnu battled with each other within this Asian region. But by 50 BC, we can see the Huns starting to emerge around the Volga River. It is then recorded that in 370 AD, they crossed the Volga River and had conquered the nomadic people known as the Alans. During this time in history, it is referred to as the migration period, also called the barbarian invasions. This was a period marking the transition from late antiquities to the early Middle Ages. This migration brought about much change within the Roman Empire. The attack of the Huns on many populations brought about this migration as people fled their carnage. The Huns had already established themselves as a powerful adversary long before Attila entered the picture. Before Attila entered the picture, Attila's uncle Rugula was king of the Huns. Under his reign, the Huns were hired by the Roman general Aetius as mercenaries while continuing their reign of terror. At the time of Rugula's death, it appears that Attila and his brother Bleda were heirs to the throne. This is where the legend of Attila will forever be forged in our minds. Attila was described as being a short man with a thin beard and a large head. Because of his powerful family, Attila was brought up preparing for war. The Huns were skilled horsemen, held exceptional archery skills, and most of all knew how to fight. Attila and his brother Bleda jointly reigned for some time. The Romans frequently paid off the Huns in turn for peace. Such as the Treaty of Margus in 439 CE, which was short-lived. By 430 CE, Attila continued its rampage after accusing the Romans of desecrating Hun graves. Attila then mobilized for war and conquered the Roman army all the way to within 20 miles of Constantinople. The Roman writer Ammianus Marcellinus once wrote, "The nation of the Huns surpasses all other barbarians in wildness of life, and though the Huns do just bear the likeness of man, of a very ugly pattern, they are so little advanced in civilization that they make no use of fire, nor any kind of relish in the preparation of the food. They feed upon the roots which they find in the fields, and the half-raw flesh of any sort of animal. I say half raw because they give it a kind of cooking by placing it between their own thighs and the back of the horses. When attacked, they will sometimes engage in regular battle, then going into the fight in order of columns, they fill the airs with varied and discordant cries. More often, however, they fight with no regular order of battle, but by being extremely swift and sudden in their movements. They disperse and then rapidly come together again in loose array, spread havoc over vast plains, and flying over the rampart, they pillage the camps of their enemies almost before he has become aware of their approach. The Huns continue to havoc throughout Europe. At some point, the Huns continued their havoc throughout Europe. At some point, it is speculated that Attila killed his own brother to gain total power. In 451 CE, a Roman-Germanic coalition led by Aetius stopped Attila at the Battle of Chalons. Attila then moved towards Italy, but famine and disease prompted the Huns to return home. It is said that the Huns were one of the reasons for the decline in the Roman Empire. Attila's reign would soon come to the end. In the morning following Attila's wedding to his young wife, he was found dead. What was the cause? Was it alcohol poisoning, murder, or other natural causes? We will never know. Even though the Huns did continue after Attila's death, they slowly disappeared from history. When a certain shepherd beheld one heifer in his flock limping, and could find no cause for the wound, he anxiously followed the trail of blood, and at length came to a sword it had unwittingly trampled while nibbling the grass. He dug it up and took it straight to Adela. He rejoiced at the gift, and being ambitious, thought he had been appointed ruler of the whole world, and that through the sword of Mars supremacy in all wars was assured to him. As historian Edward Gibbon elaborates, the vigor at which Attila wielded the sword of Mars convinced the world that it had been reserved along with for his invincible arm. In this way it became somewhat of a scepter as well, representing Attila's right to rule.